Inside Elections recently updated their 2024 Electoral College ratings, shifting the state of Michigan from leaning in favor of Joe Biden into the toss-up category. That's a significant shift in a critical battleground from a notable nonpartisan election forecaster, in an election cycle that is expected to be decided by no more than 6 key swing states. According to my own analysis, assessing the accuracy of various election forecasting models, sites, and media organizations, Inside Elections, led by Nathan Gonzalez, ranked as the 8th most accurate out of 16 such entities included on this spreadsheet. That's not great, exactly average, in fact. But if we take a look at the same accuracy ratings for the 2022 midterms, specifically assessing the US Senate races, Inside Elections ranked as the 2nd most accurate forecast in that cycle, behind just the Cook Political Report. In case you're curious how I calculated these accuracy numbers for each of these notable forecasts, in short, all I did was translate the margins in every state for the 2020 presidential election results and the 2022 Senate results into a comparable race rating, characterizing solid states as those won by a candidate by more than 15%, likely states by 7 to 15%, and lean states by 0 to 7%. Then I created a formula to award points to each forecast based on how accurate their final prediction was across all of the states. If they got it right on the money, like how Sabato's crystal ball predicted that Georgia would lean Democrat in 2020, and it did, for example, they received 5 points. If they were just one off, like how Sabato had Ohio down as lean Republican, but it ended up being likely Republican, they received 2 points, and so on. Another key note here is that the forecasts are rewarded via this system for rating a state as leaning in one direction, rather than simply marking it down as a toss-up. As well, that's a totally fine rating to give a state that is essentially 50-50, it's still a bit of a cop-out for true accuracy purposes. Okay, now let's finally do what we came here to do, and that is take a look at Inside Elections' latest 2024 presidential election map. First, the solid states, which are generally defined as races not considered to be competitive and not likely to become closely contested, starting with Democrats Joe Biden down the Pacific Coast, Washington, Oregon, California, and Hawaii. The Pacific Blue Wall, as few call it, has remained intact since 1992. Illinois used to be the lone solidly Democratic state in the middle of the country. It's now joined by Colorado and New Mexico, which both shifted heavily in favor of Democrats in 2020 and are no longer considered to be even remotely competitive according to Inside Elections. Colorado had been decided by less than 10 percentage points in 7 straight presidential elections, before Biden carried it by 13.5 points in 2020. All of the rest of the reliable blue states are all up here in the Northeast, starting in the District of Columbia, or Washington, D.C., and then Maryland, Delaware, from where President Biden served as a U.S. Senator, New Jersey, and the Empire State, New York. Then in New England, we have Connecticut, Rhode Island, Massachusetts, and Vermont, as well as Maine's 1st Congressional District. So that gives Democrats a pretty large foundation at 196 electoral votes. It would take a truly monumental landslide for Joe Biden to receive any fewer electoral votes than this baseline number. As for Donald Trump and the Republican Party, the states considered to be solidly red this cycle include the last frontier state, Alaska. In the Mountain West, we have Utah, Idaho, Montana, and Wyoming. Right down the Great Plains in Middle America, North and South Dakota, Nebraska's statewide contest and its 1st and 3rd congressional districts. We'll get to the 2nd one later on. Then Kansas, Oklahoma, and Missouri. Over in the South, the Republican strongholds of Arkansas, Louisiana, Mississippi and Alabama, Tennessee, and South Carolina. And then moving up through Appalachia and into the Midwest, we have West Virginia, Kentucky, and Indiana. Now, these 20 states spread out across the middle of the country provide Republicans with just 125 electoral votes, significantly behind the Democratic Party's safe states total. They can thank California, Illinois, and New York for that, as without those 3 electoral behemoths, they would only have 118 electoral votes behind Republicans. Ultimately, while Democrats run up large margins in these urban population centers along the coasts, Republican states just tend to be more spread out and are sparsely populated, therefore having fewer electoral votes. But let's move on now to the competitive states. That's what you're all here for anyways. Starting again with the Democratic Party, Inside Elections lists 2 states as likely Democrat, meaning that these races are not currently considered to be competitive, but have the potential to become so. They are Virginia, which backed Biden by 10 points in 2020, and the statewide contest in Maine, which backed Biden by 9 points. Virginia had long been considered a reliable Republican state for most of the 20th century, but has transitioned into becoming a Democratic-leaning state in recent years, as outside of Republican Governor Glenn Youngkin's surprise victory in an incredibly unfavorable environment for Democrats in 2021, the Republican Party has lost every other major statewide contest, that being presidential, senatorial, or gubernatorial, in Virginia since 2009. Maine, meanwhile, has backed Democratic presidential candidates in 8 straight cycles. So those 15 electoral votes from Virginia and Maine raised Democrats' total to 211. They're now 59 votes shy of the magic number, 270. Remember, that represents the majority of the 538 electoral votes a candidate needs to hit to be elected president. For the Republicans, on the other hand, their likely states are comparably larger. Texas with its 40 electoral votes, Iowa with 6, and Ohio with 17. 63 votes are combined between them. These 3 likely GOP states catapult Trump up to 188 electoral votes now. Texas has not voted blue since 1976, and despite growing hype that Democrats would flip the Lone Star State at some point in this decade, Trump still received 52% of the vote here in 2020, just as he did in 2016, as Trump and the Republican Party at large's rapid gains among Hispanics in Texas, specifically in the Rio Grande Valley, has at least temporarily put a halt to Democrats' momentum in the state. That being said, the margin difference between Biden and Trump was just 5.6%, the lowest it has been in Texas in the 21st century, which may point to a new era of closer contested contests in Texas, even if it's still Republican-leaning. Iowa and Ohio, meanwhile, went from Obama blue states in 2008 and 2012 to now reliably Republican, having backed Trump by margins around 8 to 9 points in both 2016 and 2020. They won't be targeted by Biden this cycle, as Democrats, outside of Senator Sherrod Brown in Ohio, have not really been able to find any success in these 2 states since the Obama years. That leaves us with just 10 states left on the board, along with the 2nd districts in Nebraska and Maine. Inside Elections do not actually have any specific ratings for these contests, so instead we'll just use the 2020 margins, which means that Nebraska's 2nd leans towards Biden, while Maine's 2nd leans towards Trump. Biden won this Omaha-based congressional district in Nebraska by 6 points, while Trump won the more rural and Republican-friendly Northern District in Maine by 7. Now, 3 more of these states left in the no rating category actually lean pretty decisively towards a candidate. Namely, Florida, with its 30 electoral votes, leans towards Trump. All of the momentum is with the GOP here in the Sunshine State. Trump carried it by a 3.4-point margin in 2020, the largest winning margin for any presidential candidate in Florida since 2004, and it was one of just 8 states where Trump actually performed better than he did in 2016. In 2022 then, in the midterms, Republican Governor Ron DeSantis and Senator Marco Rubio were both reelected by 19 and 16 points respectively. There was absolutely a localized red wave here in that cycle. So while Florida had commanded more Democratic attention than any other state in the last few election cycles, it is safe to say that won't be the case in 2024. Now for Joe Biden, on the other hand, Minnesota leans towards the Democratic Party, according to Inside Elections, as does New Hampshire. Both states were decided by extraordinarily narrow margins in the 2016 election. Trump came less than 2 points from flipping Minnesota and less than half a point from defeating Hillary Clinton in New Hampshire. But then in 2020, both states shifted back hard towards Democrats, supporting Biden by more than 7 percentage points each. So no surprises here, Minnesota actually notably holds the current record for longest active streak of voting for Democratic presidential candidates at 12 straight elections, while New Hampshire last voted Republican for George W. Bush in 2004. Alrighty, 7 states remain now. These are the 7 states that you will be hearing about the most over the coming months, as they are far and away the most competitive and likely to swing in either direction. All 7 were decided by less than 3 points in the 2020 election, and they each backed Trump in 2016, with the exception of Nevada, and then flipped to Biden in 2020, with the exception of North Carolina. Now, rather than repeat myself for the millionth time on all of the different voting patterns in these states, the latest polling trends, and how their demographics may favor a particular candidate, I am just going to let you peruse through my channel page where I talk about all of those factors in much more detail in a bunch of different videos. In this video, I'm going to simply tell you exactly what Inside Elections ratings are for them at this moment. The only state that tilts towards Biden, now that Michigan no longer does, according to these ratings, is Nevada, with its 6 electoral votes. Conversely, the only state that tilts towards Trump is North Carolina, 16 electoral votes there. The states that are currently rated as toss-ups are Arizona, Georgia, Pennsylvania, and Michigan, leaving their combined 71 electoral votes as decisive, with Joe Biden currently trailing Trump at 232 to 235. So that will be all for today's video. I'm going to try to bring you more of these styles of videos with other forecasts and ratings in the near future, so make sure to subscribe to my channel down below so you don't miss it. Feel free to let me know in the comments as well what you thought of this video, as well as any future suggestions for videos I can make on the 2024 election. Shout out to my channel members on screen here. Thank you so much for your support. If you would like to become a member, go ahead and click the join button below this video to receive exclusive perks. Make sure to leave a like on the video if you enjoyed it as well. You can check out more content from my channel here. And as always, thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time. EP out.